was obviously Hulk Hogan passed, and obviously the reaction was, very much mixed. You know, had half the people, especially I guess the African American community and the far left liberal left wing, um, they were like pretty much you know throwing dirt on his grave. I don't know if that's the expression or not. Hogan died at 71 of a cardiac arrest, and like I said, you had half the people are pretty much like boo because of the latter day Trump support. He was at the RNC last year supporting Trump, and then of course the one that was the big, um, really divisive thing was those comments he made years ago. They were caught secretly recorded where he was saying that he wouldn't want his daughter dating a black man unless it was in his words an 8 foot tall black who had $100 million or whatever he said, right? And for me, and I'm black, I'll be the first person to tell you. To me, Hulk Hogan's legacy is not controversial. Uh, on this podcast before, we did our top 10 um, wrestlers of all time, and I had Hulk Hogan number one. I don't really see how anybody cannot have Hulk Hogan number one when you talk about the greatest wrestlers of all time. Most wrestlers, their peak only lasts, you're talking about 5 or 6 years max of a guy being the number one guy, right? Uh, you're talking Austin. Austin's like, 96 is King of the Ring. That's the start of it. That's when he beats Jake the Snake and he goes, Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. Right? 97, um, it continues. And then 98, that's when the Attitude Era begins when Austin beats Shawn, for the title. Right? And that continues through so you're talking like 90s, 98 through like 2003, where Austin is just as big as you could possibly get, right? Then same thing with Rock. Rock's kind of like 99 through like 2003, 2004, where he's just he's everything, right? Shawn, he's you know 95 ish through like 98 when he drops the title to Austin. That's like 3 years, right? Um, Hitman. Hitman had a run. Uh, he was the biggest in WWF between Roman Hokolev. Really, I want to say Brett from like 92 to like 97. Brett said himself that 97 he thought was his most successful year in wrestling. That's the year the Montreal Screwjob happens. Then he goes to WCW. So that's a nice little 5 year run for Brett. And you have guys like, Flair and Undertaker who have these super duper long runs of excellence. But, like how people say that Jay-Z, I don't think Jay-Z is the greatest rapper of all time. And people always say he's the greatest of all time, but he was never actually the biggest rapper at any single moment, right? So if you think about it, you go from 96 through 2003. Well, in 96, B.I.G., B.I.G. doesn't die until 97. Tupac dies in, September of 97, right? So All Eyes on Me was already out. So, and then Snoop, even Snoop still, in 96, Snoop was still, the biggest rapper numbers wise. um, in the game. Actually, Biggie Smalls came out. I mean, Life After Death came out in '97. Excuse me. Um, but still, Biggie Smalls. So you're talking Biggie Smalls, Snoop, Tupac. They're still bigger. They're bigger than Jay Z in 1996. Although Reasonable Doubt comes out, and his legend begins, right? And then from there, you're talking DMX, you're talking Eminem, you're talking 50 Cent. So by the time Jay Z retires for the first time in 2003, I mean Nelly had come in there and had a big run. So uh, you could, like people say, it was never actually like the ever like the number one like biggest. I can't remember what Ja Rule did. Ludacris. Not saying that every single one of those guys was bigger, but Jay Z was just always like people. Some people say the same thing about Kobe. That Kobe was never the best player. Even though that's like rewriting history. That's revisionist history. It's pretty much everybody agreed that Kobe was the best player. Between 2006 and like 2010. Um, and people will say that about Kobe too, even though I disagree. But the point of that whole thing is that Ric Flair is kind of in that category where I don't know if he was ever, you know, the number one biggest and most important wrestler in the world in the way that Hulk Hogan was, Austin and Rock. But he was obviously like he was like top two or top three, down there at all times for like 15 years basically, right? Same thing with Taker, right? Taker had a hell of a run, but was Taker ever the number one guy? I would say he wasn't. Incredible career. He's in the top 5 or 6 all time as his Flair, but and I have Flair Sam. My top six is uh, my top three irrefutable in my mind is Hogan one, Flair two, and Austin three. And then you have Sean. I normally have Sean four, and then 5 or 6 is Rock or Undertaker, in whatever order, right? So I mean that top six to me is hard to dispute. But Hogan, right? We're talking 84. He was the WWF title for the first time in 84, right? He leaves WWF, I think, in like 93. He gets to WCW in like 94, right? 95, that's when the heel turn happens, right? So you're talking about somebody who had already been on top of the game for like, 10 years of Hulkamania. And then in 95, the guy goes and turns heel and does it in a way that, I mean, there's really never been, I don't think there's ever been. What Hulk Hogan did as Hollywood Hogan, I mean, it just showed his range as a wrestler. It's kind of like how Robert De Niro, he did all those dramatic roles to start his career, and then he did Meet the Parents, right? And I know he done Midnight Run. I never seen Midnight Run, but it just goes to show, you know, like I said, his range as an actor, and that's what Hogan had as a wrestler. I don't think there's anybody. I don't know if there's any as great as Rock was as a heel and as a face. Guys like Triple H and Flair and all these guys. I mean, they all did it at different points in their career. They had to go. They had to do both at different points in their career. I don't know if any of them ever did it as effectively as Hulk Hogan did it, because a lot of times what would happen is really basically the when you talk about Rock, you talk about Stone Cold, you talk about Flair, you talk about uh, any of those type of guys like that in that category. Um, the difference between them as a heel and a face was pretty much, I mean, they were pretty much the same guy, but they would just be more evil, and when they would do their promos, they would insult the fans and stuff like that. And that would be the only difference, basically. But outside of that, their character, their gimmick didn't really change that much. But Hollywood Hogan was completely different almost from the red and yellow Hulkamania Hogan. You know, I mean, the speech patterns and the phrases to brother and stuff like that. But in every other way, I mean, the way he looked and the way he would, the way he would carry on, it was different, you know. And I just thought that was amazing. That for him to basically hit this second prime like that. It's kind of like if LL Cool J. Most of the rappers are saying that's why people like Drake is so great because Drake's run at the top has been so long, and those rappers only have like a 5 year run at the top. When they're at the top of that, like the second longest run anybody's ever had at the top, it'd probably be at the very top. As far as the number one guy, it'd probably be Eminem had like a 5 year run. You know, Ice Cube from '88 to like '93 ish. You know, um, somebody like that. But it's hard to say. It's hard to be the number one guy uh, for longer than 5 years, and pretty much anything. And Hogan had a solid 12, 13 year run. We're talking 85 to 91, where he's the undisputed number one. And then even when Hulkamania starts to die down a little, and and it gets to like around 92, 93, people start to tire of it. And then he goes to WCW, but '95 he comes right back with it, bro, the Hollywood Hogan, and had the WWE. It took a couple of years for WWF to catch their breath and adjust to what the NWO was doing. WCW was kicking the WWF's ass, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin, he really saved the WWF, but it started with what the NWO was doing, and when Hogan turned heel, that just was such a game changer. And the domino effect was was crazy, because it forced the WWF to completely change the way that they were doing business. And that brought in the Attitude Era. And then you saw the rise of Austin and Rock and Triple H and Kurt Angle and all the guys who made that era, so great and so unforgettable. So, um, yeah, man, you can't take away, bro, from 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 what the Hulkster did, because he was the most important person, in that. Um, and yeah, man, I just think it's not up for debate. Who cares? He didn't want his daughter. He was caught. Hey, same thing with Donald Sterling, bro. If I say something in private, we all talk and say things. And I talk. I don't even give a damn. I'm one of those people who says anything I feel like on the internet, like if I have nothing to lose. Uh, and I just think it's preposterous to try to hold that against Hogan, something that he said in private. When a lot of it, like I said, things I say in public on the internet, and the things that Hulk says um, in in that clip. There's all type of politicians and all type of people who say the same type of stuff, depending on their race, about other races, and because they do it in private, if nobody hears it, they get up and put on a face and pretend like they're this and that, and they're not, bro. You know. Uh, so Hulk Hogan was a true household name and a crossover star for so long. He was the first crossover wrestling star. And if it weren't for Hogan, there would have been no Stone Cold, there would have been no Rock, there would have been no John Cena, and on and on and on. It all starts with him. So how can you know, just because he said something on a tape years ago that he apologized for, you know, it's like, come on, grow up. He was Hollywood. He was Hulk Hogan, man. Rest in peace to the great, the legend, Terry Bollea, better known as Hulk Hogan.